Good morning, everybody. I'm getting acquainted with how the sun moving through is affecting, or how the earth moving around the sun is affecting the light coming in through this window. So I've got myself positioned so that hopefully you won't have any strobe effect from me. So welcome, welcome. In fact, welcome was what was just occurring to me, is that I would love for you to let yourself just say, welcome, welcome. And, let yourself notice what it's like to create a welcoming move. What's a welcoming? So for me, it's an opening, but it's kind of a love scoop. So for me, welcoming is opening out and then, so notice what kind of qualities would you like to welcome in this morning? And go ahead and give those to yourself. And that welcoming, see if there's any movement that wants to occur in your body when you're welcoming. And notice if there's something going on that you really don't want to welcome. It's going on and it's around you, and you're using all of your energy to keep it out or to try and control it or make it go away. What would happen if you went ahead and welcomed that in a way that could let that come in and through? So, like, whatever is going on, can you let yourself meet it? That kind of welcoming, here you are, and maybe not even take it in, maybe let it go by. So here it is. And instead of pushing it, maybe I can take it and just let it go by. Or that energy of it, we're just going to doing a little mini, what we call a constellation. I can use the energy of it, but claim it for me rather than resisting the energy. Like there's a lot of, like I had over the weekend, I had an experience of someone disapproving of something that I'm up to. And I hadn't had that experience in a long time. And I spent some time kind of going, ooh, I should not be having this experience. But then when I let myself, and Gay did a little coaching with me, like, this might be something you want to give a little attention to. Might be something useful here. And I went, ew, first, and then that can't possibly be true. But then when I let my body just, this is energy coming toward me, and I can take in this energy and kind of titrate what might be useful. And it was entirely different than resisting and keeping things out. So to me, that also has to do with loop of awareness, that you can let your attention shift. And then what I was thinking of this morning is let your attention shift and then notice if there's a fear melter that you want to add to shifting your attention. So when I'm like thinking of my recent experience, what I realized when I took it in is I felt a little freeze. And so when I'm shifting my attention, I'm going to add a little wiggle to it. So I'd like to suggest to you shifting your attention first out to somebody in the group, so that you're letting yourself give your attention, the gift of your attention, to somebody. And if you connect, like I'm noticing Jennifer, and when I look at Jennifer, I automatically want to wiggle. So I'm sending attention out, and then with a wiggle, and then bringing attention back to me and adding in a fear melter. And then let your attention go out to somebody else, and then notice if there's a fear melter that you want to add to that. And you can just go ahead and add to that. It could be oozing or rooting, or wiggling, or the love scoops that we've been doing. So the practice is letting the flow of energy go with your attention, because there's so much angst going on right now, which is another word for fear, that adding in the fear melters to your loop of awareness When I do that, I experience immediately more flow and more settling in myself and more ability to make a choice. Now, if something big is going on, give yourself lots of shifts. And you might shift way out, like to people that are in another country, and feel them and give fear melters to them, and then coming back to you. And then noticing, what does your body want to do? Which of the fear melters does your body want to do when you bring attention back to you? And it may be a particular part of you, like I can feel that my hands really want to do this right now. So your body can let you know where there's more flow wanted, or where there's more attention wanted. So letting yourself shift your attention. I'm going to take a little water. I had my cold last week after our workshop, where people were generously sharing their germs. And so there were a number of us that got sick. So I'm much better, but have a little morning phlegm to welcome and give attention to. So notice, as you're doing this loop, what pace feels the most nourishing. Because the shift, what I find is that the shift really is the engine of allowing the flow of my attention. And if I combine it with like my essence pace, or the pace that I'm feeling this morning, I'm much more able to be with it. I'm much more able to absorb it, because it can stay pretty heady if I'm just following directions. Like, I'm going to shift my attention, but if I actually let myself experience shifting my attention, I can feel my body beginning to spread out, and I feel more flow throughout my body. Oh, and my toes just checked in and said, "Hey, I'm here." Because my toes often are, especially in the morning, they're kind of the last thing to wake up. And so, what are your waking up signals? So as I'm talking, I invite you to continue shifting your attention. That's the big thing. So if you forget everything else, whenever you're stuck or you want to shift something that's going on, shifting your attention, it would be interesting too to find out what's the number of shifts that are reliable for you to shift your state. And I'd say that it's got to be at least 3. And what was coming to me is between 3 and 8. But I'd love for you to experiment with that, because then you've got something that's very reliable that you can use yourself, but you can also share with clients. Because very often people try to solve something from within the problem, that anti-Einsteinian move. And so to make a shift of your consciousness is then going to allow your intelligence and your problem solving to really flow. So that's my invitation for you this week, is to how many shifts of attention are reliable for you. And then you can write that down somewhere, because when you're stuck, you're not going to remember that. So when you're, especially if you're in fear, you're not going to be able to think, because you're in another part of your brain. But when I shift a number of times, I can feel when my problem solving brain comes online again. And they're like, oh, okay, here's what's going on. And let me look at this from another direction. And I'm not breathing. And, and my observer and my being with comes online again. So when your presence, I guess that's really what it's about, when your presence comes online again. And then you can use that. You could even have you could add that into your, to any kind of mechanisms that you have for recovering your presence. But for me, this is the quickest one. So take a moment and just notice your whole body experience right now. And also, as you're looking at other people, like as I'm looking at you all and bringing my attention back to me and looking at you, I see more elements of all of you. And I also feel more of our connection with each other. Because the big purpose for having all of us come together is that we're sharing our reservoir and we're combining our energy so that you can contribute into the group energy and also have plenty for you. So the main purpose of all of these is that we fill our reservoirs again so that we can continue making choices in life and finding ways to enjoy life regardless of what's going on around us, but also as a way of making smart choices in the midst of chaos. When there's, when our external, it's like the traffic monitors have all gone on break. And so it's up to us to take responsibility for making choices that are going to be friendly to us and others. And I find giving attention to my body and shifting my attention creates a level of presence that allows me to do that from essence rather than from and from reactivity. So next thing I'd like to do is to have our, did you have a chance to get the card, Michelle? You did. Okay, great. I was a little late this morning. So this is the one that I just picked out of the deck. And I love that when I'm just letting my body make the choice. So I'd love for you to let your attention go into the card and see if any fear melter wants to come up as you're looking at the card, and then bringing your attention back to you and notice if there are any of the fear melters that you want to add. Like my favorite is the wiggle. That's the easiest one for me to have access to. So see what's the easiest for you. And while you're shifting, while you're shifting, I'm going to try to shift my phlegm while you're shifting. Hold on a moment. Here we are. So I demonstrate 100% responsibility through my choices and by committing and recommitting to responsive creativity. I demonstrate 100% responsibility through my choices and by committing and recommitting to responsive creativity. That's a lot of big words. How can my presence inspire others to take 100% responsibility? How can my presence inspire others to take 100% responsibility? So let yourself go back and forth a little bit more. Notice what you notice in the card and how that might relate to responsibility. And responsibility, I ultimately see as my reclaiming my creativity. Because when I'm not being responsible, I'm reacting and I can't really choose. But when I am willing to take responsibility for my choices, then I reclaim my creativity and my ability to make connections between things. Let's come on back to the big group because I want to share just a couple more things about responsibility that I've found incredibly useful. And I'm recalling that. So can we come back to the big group, Michelle? Thanks. I'm recalling that responsibility for most people is equated with blame and burden. Like who's responsible for this is really who's to blame. And so we really have responsibility and blame glued together, or responsibility and burden glued together. So I'm wondering if, as you're shifting your awareness and you're getting curious, the move of being willing to choose rather than react. I think that's at the heart of taking responsibility. So you might think of an issue that's going on right now for you where there's either blame or burden going on. And what would it be like to reclaim your creativity about that issue? And notice how you might have given your creativity away. Like, there's nothing I can do about this, which might be true, but there is something that you can do. Even if you can't do anything about that, you can do something about you, about how you're feeling, how you're reacting. And what you're taking on as a burden, that's more my, what I get attached to responsibility is, okay, I'm supposed to do this. And it can get also attached to hero. I don't know if you like, oh, I should take care of this. Somebody needs to take care of this. I should take care of this. So the move of being response able to me comes through combining fear melters with getting curious about what are my choices here. And it's a what is responsive creativity for you? So that might be something that you could play with this week, particularly if you've got a project that you're working on or something that you're wanting to resolve that maybe has been going on for a while. First of all, notice if you're in blame or burden, and then how can I open my body? How can I welcome? That's a move that could shift. How could I just welcome this? What could I learn from this? To me, that's the one of the questions is shifting from whose fault is this or who needs to take care of this to how can I respond to this in a new way? How can I choose something different here? So it's a big one, the responsibility. In fact, I've often said that responsibility, if people really knew how to take responsibility, we wouldn't need laws. And now that our laws are getting fussed with in a big way, it's really up to us to, like I do what I say I'm going to do. And a lot of that has to do with agreements also, but playing with shifting out of fear and then into what would it be like to actually respond to this, and welcoming it and using it with the big question that I use almost always is there anything I could learn from this? Is there something that this is being presented and there's something I might learn from this? And that could be anything from, oh, I had a hint of this when we first interacted and I overlooked it. So what I can learn from this is to trust my body's first intuitions. But that's not then an excuse to move back into blaming yourself. See, I didn't do it then, so now there's a big problem. But that openness to learning has enabled me to shift from situations that have been painful or where there's been a lot of conflict going on, that I've actually been able to shift my experience, and then that's created an opening where something can be resolved. And at the least, you get to increase your own sense of well-being, your own sense of here I am, I'm with myself, I'm giving love to myself for whatever I'm experiencing. And that to me is one of the big functions of our loop of awareness, is that we're loving what we're experiencing and we're loving each other with our attention. And I think it was Simone Weil, and I've shared this, that our attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. And I really appreciate that when we give our attention to something, we are really giving our love, our presence. And so that's something that you can do as you move around in the world and as you're interacting with other folks. So let me turn this now to our Presence Connect play for today. Tap for a new combo. Presence, get curious with, hmm. So let yourself try that on. To me, that's a big shift from critical brain to right brain to wonder brain. And you can use continuously. If you're working through something that feels really heavy or dense, you can be and letting your body In fact, let yourself just try, and we keep our hmms in here, but what if you let the travel all around your body like a bee? You know, we have succulents around our yard and pollinators so that we're supporting the bees, but we have our own inner bees, the and you can let your move around in you. So connect. Oh, this is a biggie with regard to responsibility. It's see others as allies. So if when I'm connecting and I'm in fear, I see others as the enemy, and you do too. And you don't know that you're doing that because you're operating from another part of your brain. And this can happen when you walk into a new situation or something unexpected happens. We go into our limbic brain and go, enemy. And so if you're willing to, you could use your fear melters and your loop of awareness to see others as allies, which for me then connects to what can I learn from this? So even somebody where you're thinking, why do I have this person in my life? Why don't they just go away? And what I've often found is that I haven't learned what there is to learn yet from this particular person. And that might be a lesson that's surprising to me, like to be able to clearly say no, or the timing isn't right here, or I felt hurt when that happened, something that's been unsaid or unfelt. So seeing others as allies, that was actually the change that made it possible for me to move past seeing Gay as always criticizing me. I know, rather than trying to get him to change, I committed to seeing him as my ally. And it was, and you wouldn't think that those two things would go together, but lo and behold, over, a period of time, the criticism just sort of dropped away. And there is this whole thing we call requiring, what if something keeps repeating, there's some way in which you're requiring it. And that's sort of an icky thing to look at. It's like, I couldn't possibly be doing that. I'm better than that. But to really look at, oh, I've been requiring criticism. And then I could look at where I learned that, and that criticism in my family was actually the way that I was loved. So like, I'm only telling you this for your own good, so the criticism of, I just want the best for you. So I'm going to criticize you so that you don't do the same things that I did. And it was kind of the best that they could do. And so, getting that sense of being willing to see others as your allies can be really quite magical. And so if you're interested in creating magic in the midst of the chaos that we're in right now, that's a great move for you to make. And play. I'm so glad this one came up. Play is let your attention fan out and then focus like a laser. So one of the attention skills that I find incredibly useful is that I'm able to both fan and to focus. So in fear, your attention gets very narrow. You get, blinders on. So actually practicing fanning out your attention and focusing your attention really opens up your creativity, your ability to be present, and your ability to play with others, to see an opening, to see a place where you might be able to form a connection. So those are your possibilities for this week. And I appreciate you showing up. And I love starting my week this way, even though I sort of fell out the door and rushed over into my studio today. And I also want to go, ta-da, the lamp has arrived, the one I've been talking about for so many weeks. So it has finally come, and I'm feeling very happy about it, getting my studio all together. So thank you for sharing the time with me. And you're welcome to stay and share big stuff and little stuff with each other. And look forward to seeing you next week. Mwah. Bye now.